Hey everyone. So I know it's been a while since I've published a video, and this one's going to be a little bit different for the channel, but I kind of want to walk you through some of the processes of what I've been going through recently. So many of you noticed I haven't posted a video in quite some time, and there's been so many times I've sat down at my desk and I've wanted to publish a video, but I've just been incredibly busy. At the end of last year, I went through a huge promotion at my job, and it has, in short, not been without its difficulties, right? On top of that, I've had just a lot of life happen as well. I got married, planned the honeymoon and, doing all these sort of things, right? And so I just had a lot going on, but I kind of want to sit and just take a minute and kind of just go through what I've been going through more recently and reflect on it a bit. Really stressed at my job, and I was like, hey, maybe I should consider work elsewhere. Maybe what I'm doing is not good for me right now, and maybe I need to look elsewhere. And so I started that hunt, and that led me to essentially applying for two companies, one of which I'm not going to list probably, but it's a very large banking company, right? And I went through the process with them, and I ended up actually getting a job offer, and I declined that job offer for a variety of reasons. And if there's interest, maybe I'll walk through that. But I want to focus this video on the company I'm actively applying for. And I'm recording this video before I get any sort of feedback on how that interview process went, because I really kind of want to be candid. I want you all to really see this in live time, rather it comes out good or bad, right? And kind of just understand how I'm reflecting on it a bit. So I decided to apply to a role at Amazon, specifically a role under AWS. And there's a variety of reasons why I chose this, but I read the job description of it, and it related to a lot of the technologies I was using. And it seemed like a space where I could really do a lot of good. And then, it being Amazon, they could, I thought there'd be really good opportunity there. And so I decided to apply for the position. So now I should say I am in a leadership role at the job I'm currently at. So I'm a tech lead and a senior software engineer. So I applied for an L6 role, I believe. I'm not really sure how the L's work at Amazon. I can't remember which one I applied for. I'm pretty sure it was L6. I had an initial sort of phone screen, and the original, technical person I had the phone screen with recommended me for L5. So I started the process actually interviewing through at L5, which is not, I think, technically senior for Amazon's standpoint, but Amazon considers senior, I would say, probably a little bit higher than some other organizations. And I would say FAANG in general considers people a little bit higher than that. But anyway, so I decided to go on the L5 track. And in talking to the recruiter, she said, you are at a level where I don't want you to do the online assessment. She's like, I'll override it. So, she started that process to get that overridden. And then she's like, once that's overridden, we can go ahead and get your interview scheduled. So in the meantime, I had started practicing leak code, just making myself a little bit more familiar because I was rusty. And like I said, I had the other interview process before this, so there's a little bit of overlap. So I'd already been on leak code a little bit, but I sat down. First thing I did since I've heard back from this recruiter, when she said, okay, I'll get this overridden, let me work through this. First thing I did was I sat down and I made, my plan for this sort of interview, and I'll put that up on the screen / share it. I mean, it was literally just a few, I'm looking at it now, and it was quite literally just a few bullet points of kind of here's what I'm going to do. Basically I had a little bit over 2 weeks till my interview. So I'm all right, here's what I'm going to do to prep for it. During that prep, that's what I did. I really did heavily focus on that. I also did have one of the candid chats. So if you've ever applied to Amazon, they'll, when they reach out to you about scheduling your date, they'll also reach out to you and ask you if you want to do a candid chat. So a candid chat is just a coffee chat conversation that you get to have with somebody at Amazon prior. You can do it either after or prior to your interview. I recommend doing it prior. The reason why is because the person I talked to was amazing, actually. She really cared about, the candid being on those candidate interviews is completely voluntary. So the people who do them ideally want to be there. And she was just she really was like incredibly candid with me and answered all my questions. I mean, I asked her things like compensation. I asked her about work-life balance. I asked her about, does she feel like she does work that matters? You know, like I really did ask her that, because that's work I feel like I do now. Like I do work that I feel matters, which is incredible. And I wanted to continue to do that. So I asked her a lot about that. I also asked her about diversity. Specifically, they'll line you up with people in a certain like affinity group if you select one of the affinity groups. And so I selected BEN, which is their Black Employees Network. And so the person I spoke to, she was a Black woman. And I mean, she was able to answer questions that I, a Black man, you know, in tech have, right? And, you know, you can say what you want about that, but it was really important to hear, and it was really great perspective to have. And I'll sort of touch on that a little bit like later, probably. So I was incredibly nervous. I mean, up to leading to this. I mean, I literally studied for a minimum of 2 hours every day after I finished work. So like I work a normal 8-hour work day, and I was getting off and I was immediately doing this sort of stuff. And I mean, that went on for basically right up to my interview. And my wife can contest, like I was defeated. I just was so nervous. And part of me was like, I don't know if I could really handle doing the interview. Like, I don't know if there's going to be anything in me left when I go to do the interview. And, yeah, like this humongous existential dread. I was like, wow, this is like FAANG. This is like, you know, this is like the worst interview process I could ever go through, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And then we came to the interview day. And for those who don't know, the interview loop at Amazon is 5 total interviews. So you can split it over 2 days, but I'll be honest with you, I'd recommend just doing it in 1 day and getting it over with, unless you really feel like you can't. I think it's more beneficial for you just to continue on. But anyway, and maybe once I get feedback back from them, maybe like, you know, I might think differently on that. But I think powering through is probably best. So, you know, every interview will have like a subject matter. So I interviewed for a software engineering position, right? And so there are 5 of those total interviews. So I started out the interview day on the systems design interview. And I don't know if the order is always the same, but I started out with a systems design interview, and the man introduced himself to me. He actually informed me that he's actually the hiring manager of the project and all that good stuff. So we started out with some pretty basic, like, hey, how are you? And then they led into, you know, the typical LP questions, the leadership principle questions that Amazon asks, which is like, tell me a time when. And he was very interested in hearing it. And I think I was well prepared to give like metrics and stuff. But like, here's the biggest thing. Before I started all the interviews, as I was like introducing myself, I was like, hey, like I do have notes. Like, is that okay? And the reason why I said that is because everybody recommends you say that. But like, I like the recruiter literally recommended me. She was like, hey, if you have notes, like tell them like it's okay. And everybody's A-okay with it. Like nobody was like, oh no, you can't have notes, you know? So it was an understandable process, but I think it really helps because they're not like, why is he looking around? Why is he not like looking at me? So, or looking at the screen, you know, all that good stuff. Right. So anyway, I have my notes. I kind of went through some stories. I highly, highly recommend you spend a lot of time on your stories. Like I did not think they would be that important, but some interviewers I think really, really resonated with some of the stories that like I told and stuff. So I would say make sure you spend time on them. And start out with systems design interview. The guy, when we kicked off the call, he, like I said, he mentioned he was my hiring manager. And man, I was like nervous, but I think I got through it. I think I didn't do maybe the best job, but I think I did a really good job at answering his questions as he like asked them about like certain design decisions and stuff like that. And I mainly just kept talking. Ultimately, while maybe I didn't do the best in the system design, maybe, and like it's my opinion, I didn't necessarily do the best. I think he was like, I think he, you know, probably was like, well, he was talking to me, he was explaining his process, like he didn't just put stuff without explaining. And then the biggest thing is, ask questions before you get started as well. So I asked like plenty of questions before I got started. So we had a few interviews. Like I said, onto the troubleshooting one. Pretty basic stuff. Kind of just asked me like networking questions. In particular, the role I'm working on, the role I applied to has like networking considerations. So he asked me stuff like that. You know, like I think one question I was asked was like, you know, when you type in a web address, what happens? like beyond just, there's a DNS lookup. Like, tell me what happens, right? So I explained like the protocol and stuff like that. He asked me other networking questions like, what are different protocols and blah, and how do you debug firewall issues and stuff like that. I'm going to skip the troubleshooting one because it's very similar to the automation, process improvement, all that good stuff sort of thing. Those were very similar interviews. They're more like objective. They're more like, hey, I want to see how you think about things and also how you react to things. And then I'll talk a little bit about the last interview I went through. So like I said, that's like the bar raiser interview. So it wasn't like technical, but she asked me a lot of the STAR questions. I think this is when I answered the most. I think I answered like 5, maybe even 6 in some of our discussions as we went on. So please make sure you do that. But I would say like when you get to the bar raiser, it's extra important. I know they say that like, no person's more important than anybody else in the hiring process, but I think the bar raiser really is, because they're outside of that team, so they're not going to care maybe as much about the technical knowledge, but they are going to be like, is this person a good leader for AWS, for Amazon? Because that's why they ask all these leadership principle questions. They ask them because they expect everybody at Amazon to be a leader. Even if you don't actually lead people, they want you to have a leader mindset, which I get and I understand. I think it's pretty important. Back to like, I think my perspective of the interview day, it was long. I did have like breaks. They did a pretty good job of that. I would say every interviewer generally was like, oh, hey, like if you need to, like, especially if they knew that they were immediately after another interview, they'd say like, oh, hey, like if you need a minute, like that's okay. If you need to take a little bathroom break or something, let me know. I took advantage of the breaks that they programmed throughout the day for me, but your mileage may vary there. But anyway, I had done that whole process and I was like super excited. I was super nervous though, like throughout the whole interview day. I'll say I had like these ramps of like, I felt like I did great. Oh no, I didn't feel like I did good, so I really didn't know. And I'll say like at the end, my last interview, I felt really good just because the person I was talking to just seemed like a really genuine person. And it was really cool to talk to them. Also, like, I got to ask her some interesting questions. For example, she was an engineer as well, but throughout that whole day, I had 5 interviews. She was the only woman who interviewed me. And I asked her that. I said, what do you think about diversity at Amazon? Because like I've spoken with this other woman at Amazon who's an engineer, who's, also a Black engineer like myself, so I'm kind of curious, what you think about this. And, she really provided a lot of really cool like context and stuff. So I will say like, make sure, and that was just one example of like a question I asked, but make sure you have good examples. Like even if you need to write something down, like to ask them in the interview, do that. Because that's what I did. I started out the interview, like I mentioned, I asked them, hey, can I like, read my notes? And I also asked them, hey, do you mind if I take notes? And everybody was like, no, that's fine. I'm going to take notes myself. Because they're taking notes of you too. There's going to be times where they pause and take notes. And just say like, hey, like I'm going to take some notes too. So how do I feel? I mean, like I said, incredibly nervous. I've been kind of losing sleep waiting on the results from the committee. Like I got an email back yesterday from one of the recruiters, and I kind of wanted to throw up. Like I was just so nervous. I didn't even really want to open the email, and it was just like hey, yeah, like we'll get back to you. And like once the committee meets, I was just like, oh man. And so I will feel like a big failure really if I don't make this move. And the reason why is because like, it's not because it's Amazon. It's not because it's AWS. It's really because like, I really feel like this is the role for me. And I really feel like the current role I'm in is not good for me. And it's not a reflection maybe directly of my employer or anything like that, my current employer or anything like that, but it's really just like, I just don't know if I can keep burning at both ends, because that's how I feel right now with this. And I'm not the only one at my org, there's a lot going on with it, and I'm going to get into that, but like, I don't know. And I've got other things to take care of. I've got my health, I've got my wife, I've got a dog, I've got a home, I've got family, I've got so many other things that I have, so many other things and so many other people that depend on me and need me. And I can't keep burning myself out at work. Yeah, I can't. So that's kind of why I'm at this move. I don't know if I'm going to cut the video a little bit weird, but yeah, it's really how I feel about it. So I'm just waiting to hear back. You're supposed to hear back within 5 days. My interview was the last Thursday, and today is Tuesday, the Tuesday following. So ideally I'll know by Thursday, but like, I feel like I'm going to be really crushed if I don't get it. And it's really uncomfortable for me to have to come to that reality. But it's one I might have to, and it's one that, everybody's gonna say, oh, you shouldn't take personally, or people are gonna bash, Amazon and stuff, but it's like, none of that matters to me. What matters to me is like, I might not get it. And that's hard. That's a hard pill to swallow, right? So, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, if you're like me and you're interviewing, or you're trying to get into this company or another, like, do what's important for you. Do what's important for you from a job perspective and a mood perspective. But like, at the same time, like, know that just because you might get a no, and I'm also saying this for myself because I might be reviewing this video and crying up to it later, but like, just because you get a no does not mean you're not right for exploring another opportunity, and doesn't mean you're not right and not willing or not deserving of that position. So for everybody out there who's going through interviews, who's thinking about going through interviews, whether it's at Amazon or really anywhere else, know that you're taking the right steps, you're doing what you can, and you're going to figure it out. See ya.